Say what?
Hello and welcome back. It's time for Say What, where we hear from those connected to the industry about what's going on in our world of electrical apprenticeship. And this includes topics that you have suggested to us, so keep those coming. I'm your host, Cindy Sandifer, and I am joined, as usual, by Todd Stafford, the Executive Director of the Electrical Training Alliance. Today, I always say it's going to be great, and it is. It's great again today. We are going to chat about the Closing the Skills Gap grant and the many benefits that it offers JTCs and first-year apprentices. But Steve, I was thinking about your history and your involvement in so many, it seems like so many grant projects. I feel like you've been doing this for ages, even though it's probably not been quite that long. But I was curious, we're talking about the Closing the Skills Gap grant, which is not easy to say, it's a bit of a tongue twister. But can you give us just a brief overview about this particular grant and why it's so valuable to the local program?
Well, the Closing the Skills Gap grant was put out by the Department of Labor to increase the number of apprentices in the United States, and not just for the electrical industry, but throughout the United States. And the reason this works so well for us is because if you've listened to our leaders, our international president and the CEO of NECA, they've all been saying for the last year or two how important it is to increase the number of apprentices, hence increasing the number of journeymen in the industry. And this grant falls right in line with that. The whole idea behind the grant is to increase the number of apprentices for us in the electrical industry. And that's our whole purpose of this thing.
Excellent. Yeah, meeting a need that we knew we had, but then coming across something like this that's so helpful. Marcus, thinking about, you've been an instructor, you've been a training director, so you've got these two really interesting lenses. Can you share your thoughts about the grant, looking at it instructor, training director perspective?
Yeah, I think as an instructor, I think it's going to be great. It's going to open up so much more time when the apprentices are in the building for, cool stuff, hopefully getting into more labs, and really the curriculum is doing a lot of the teaching, a lot of the lecture-based stuff that instructors had to do in the past. But now hopefully we can get a lot of that done in the CML courses, and just open up the in-classroom time to more, beneficial stuff to the apprentice. Get them some stuff if somebody's stuck on a data center and they're doing, 4-inch PVC in a ditch for 2 years at a time. Well, let's get them in doing conduit bending. We can have, more labs for that. That's kind of my
That's the goal. That's the goal. How do we get more hands-on training at the apprentice level? That's a great analogy.
Right. Yeah, I can remember being at the JTC, and there was a fourth or fifth year apprentice, and he was actually speaking about being nervous. Because he loved the work he was doing. He loved the contractors so much. They were fantastic, but it was the type of work,
right,
that he was getting experience with. And he said, what happens if?
Yeah, it's no fault of our industry on it, and we're so successful in certain areas of work we do, and we're so niche market driven industry in a lot of cases, a lot of different disciplines we work within, and it's hard to get out of that market when you're competing in a business model. It requires you to be efficient. So how do you get that changeover? Well, that's where the JDC is going to have to find a way that we start picking up that slack. No doubt about it. And that's a great example Marcus was speaking of, how we're trying to free up time at the JDC to do just that.
Absolutely. And Tonya, you were the program administrator at a JTC, and Tonya and I were actually at JTCs around the same time, so we got to work together a little bit. And so you, Tonya, have all this experience. What do you see, what benefits do you see this particular grant bringing to not only the apprentices, but to the JTC administration?
Well, there's a big benefit for the apprentices, because for the first year, they don't have to pay for anything. It's all covered underneath the grant. This gives them ample time to save for the second year, so they can start doing that. They can also determine through the coursework and through on-the-job training if this is a career path that they want to pursue. And that is, all they have to do if they decide that they don't want to do it, just tell the director and the training director, and they're done. They don't lose anything except the time that they spent, working and doing the coursework. So that's a good thing. And then the curriculum is self-paced. Of course, they have deadlines for their work and everything, but not needing to have the work done, I guess, the next day or the next time that they meet in class. There's a lot of perks to that. For the JATCs, they can have more time for hands-on training. I know when I worked at the JATC, training was mostly done on the weekends. And you kind of heard some gripes about that, but with this grant, it frees up more time for them to do training during the week. And then the apprentices have, their time for the weekend is available. So the training directors, the instructors can still view the coursework that the apprentices are doing. So it's just, they'll save the JTCs will save some money, not a lot, but some money, participating in this program. It's great all around. It's win-win for both.
That's funny you said that, because I was thinking there's a lot of wins. Like, you're talking about all these wins, and thinking about that apprentice, which is who we're serving. That's who we're looking out for. The cost, because we can say all day that it's so much less or so much different than college, but money is money, and depending on where your situation is, it's still something that you're paying. And then figuring,
especially our first year apprentices, first day walk out. It's much harder there because they haven't got involved in the industry yet to start earning a paycheck.
Right.
Okay, so this helps them a lot of ways.
Yeah. And then figuring out what they want to do. We've talked about that's one of, if not the number one reason that people leave.
The number one reason we hear from my feedback is it's just not what I thought it was going to be, which, let's expose it to them as soon as we can.
Right.
So, because there's nothing wrong if we've chosen a different pathway that doesn't fit for somebody choosing to work with us. That's fine. Let's just identify it early. Get somebody in there that wants to complete, and we'll go.
Right. And then, as Tonya pointed out, I think another important factor is, apprentices are all ages, all situations, right? So some may have families, they have different things, and this really does open up a bit of freedom. I mean, there are those deadlines, there are things you have to do and places you do have to be, but having that little bit of freedom to try to, as you're trying to get used to this new career path that you're on. I think that's a really interesting point to bring up, and I think it makes it more appealing.
We all work for a leisure time, is what we do.
Yeah. Right.
That's why we work. So why don't we just find a way we can schedule in there? Exactly.
Yeah. Alan, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, let me add something to that. With the CML format, the schools, all of the JATCs are going to have the opportunity to schedule the classes. That's one nice thing about this grant, the way it's set up, is that the flexibility is there for each JATC to run their program the way that they choose to run it. And as far as freeing up the time, they can assign the assignments 1 or 2 or 3 weeks out in advance and have those students, give them enough time over a 2 or 3 week period to get those lessons done, and then bring them in when they feel like it. If they want to bring them in twice a week, like a normal class for the evening school, they can do that, where they do tutoring one night and do hands-on exercise the night. They want to bring them in once every 2 weeks or once a month. That's up to them. And they have that flexibility with this grant. So the CML format, as Marcus mentioned, a lot of the lecturing that normally takes place in the classroom is taken care of with this new format. And we think once the JATCs become familiar with it, they are really going to like this format, and they're going to like the freedom that it's going to give their instructors to go through and do a little bit more hands-on and a lot more training.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve, that was important. Thinking about Alan and Dave, we've got 2 training directors here with us. So you're not hearing just from the Electrical Training Alliance. We're doing this for the local program, absolutely, but if it doesn't work for the local program, then there's no point.
Alan and Dave's opinion gives a lot more weight to what we're talking about here, because they're the ones that actually have to implement it locally. They got to make it work locally. So
exactly.
Definitely want to hear from them.
Yes. So Alan, why did you choose to participate with this grant?
Well, we chose to participate in it because I really believe that this is the direction that we need to go in the type of training that we're doing and what we offer our students. I think that it gives both our students and our instructors additional resources because our students can, even if our instructors do lecture on a subject, now the students have an additional resource of additional lecturing online that they can go back to as they're completing the lessons and so forth. Another big thing for us, especially on the instruction thing, we have a very large jurisdiction. You can drive 12 hours from my training center and still be in my jurisdiction. So it opens up opportunities for our employers for projects out in those rural areas and to be able to utilize apprentices on those projects, because then they can complete coursework while they're out in the field in those remote areas, and then we can bring them in, from time to time to do the hands-on and testing and so forth. And that's a real big thing for us.
Wow, I think my mouth dropped for just a second when you said the 12 hours. I was like, wait, but that's the thing, like each situation is so unique, right? We were saying the apprentices situations, in family lives and so forth are unique, but JTCs and AJTCs, it's different. And so I think that's such a valuable point that you make. Dave, I see the gator. I saw that gator on that shirt. I'm just saying it could just be, just an image of an alligator. I'm not saying it was for Florida, but Dave, why did you choose to participate with this grant?
Well, we were already familiar with the interim credentials. We were working with a couple of high schools, and so we were familiar with the format, and we've been pleased with the outcome from some of the students coming out of the high schools, having gone through that curriculum and then coming into our apprenticeship program. And I see a lot of flexibility. I think Steve mentioned the flexibility aspect of it. I can see the opportunity to fill in some gaps with students who we've seen an uptick in transfers from other JTCs. And we all know we don't all do the same curriculum the same way. And so we could use some of these courses to fill in those gaps without having to expend instructor time. And so that was, I'm looking forward to that aspect of it as well. And another example, the EVITP course, the new course, we probably are spending about half of the instructor time with the new course than we did on the original course too. So, and Steve can talk about the time that has been freed up for him to spend in the shop. And we're excited about that as well.
Absolutely. I love the connection to the interim credentials, being able to see, how they pair, or at least just having that experience. And not everybody's going to have that, but being able to relate it to that. I think that's really interesting that you said that. You've both kind of mentioned, yes.
And I had just one thing on this is that.
Of course, Steve.
David, of course. David brought up the interim credential, and we do have, this is two different interim credential programs that we have. So we don't want people to be confused that we have the interim credential for the high school programs that Bill Ball oversees. And the curriculum with that, it covers some of the first year material. The interim credential for first year apprentices, which is what this grant is, completely different first year program. And it covers all of the curriculum in the first year. So an individual that goes through this program will have all of their first year curriculum taken care of through the grant and through the CML training. And with the high school program, they have a portion of the first year taken care of. So there is a little bit of difference. We certainly don't want people to get confused, but I think David said the right thing is that they were able to experience what the IC did for the high schools and how it upgraded a lot of the lessons. And what we've done is taken it with the CML, taken it a step further. And these lessons are even more involved and a little bit more complete than what they had with the high school program.
Excellent. Thank you for making that distinction, because that isn't clear. A lot of times we hear IC and we think either just the high school, or some may just think about this grant program. So Alan and Dave, so far, what are your thoughts on this? And you kind of alluded to that and why you chose to participate, but I just want to know, is there anything else that you're thinking about with this? Anything you would want to share with someone that's listening?
Well, one of the things that we have noticed is the grades are up over a normal first year class.
Nice.
We're seeing our lowest grades in the 80s, where there's always somebody that's borderline, but we're not seeing that right now. We're seeing an uptick in the grades, and so that's positive.
That's very positive. Have you tried to pursue that any to find out why, perhaps? That's an unforeseen, I guess, benefit of what we have. I didn't see that coming, but I'll take it, and I'd like to figure out why so we can replicate that somewhere else.
No, I don't yet. We're probably only 3 tests in, but it's been interesting.
Very good. Good. I'd like to follow up on that, Dave. Let's just continue to talk about that as we go forward. I'd like to find out what makes that benefit so much. You do that.
Right. Alan, anything to add to that?
One other thing that we're looking at very closely, probably like all training centers, we've had an increase in absenteeism because of the pandemic and so forth. And now all of our students, are if you don't feel good, don't come to school. And we're looking at this as another tool when we have to do that makeup time. Now we have, again, a really, really good tool for that student to be able to go online, get lecture online, and it's going to make our makeup time much more flexible than we've had in the past.
Excellent.
That's very exciting too, and I love to see if your grades go up on that type of format compared to we really got something we're doing what we didn't see. Well, that's good. So.
Yeah, that is really good. Okay, so
well, the worry has been is okay. The student at home, are they really going to apply themselves, or is their spouse doing it, or are they doing exactly? So when the grades start picking up on the testing, the assessments go up with that type format. I really encourage you to see that. It's good.
Okay, so Steve, do you go by Steve or Steven? Steve V. Sorry.
Stevie.
Either's perfectly fine.
Just whatever, right? No, I'm kidding. Not that. What are you seeing as far as time in the classroom? I know we talked about EVITP, but what are you seeing there?
So because it's, completely new, we've been, we're almost done with one semester now. And so we didn't throw everything into a bit of an uproar. We decided to just stick to our normal schedule. So the apprentices that we've got in right now, we have 35 total currently that are on the CML curriculum. And these apprentices went through they were started on a traditional path, which we do a 15-week boot camp to get them started. We do CPR, first aid, what to expect on the job site, and an awful lot of conduit bending to get them ready for when they hit the job site. So with them, it was sort of an easy transition. Of course, just like any transition, there's going to be some hiccups and bumps in the road. But overall, I have nothing but positive things to say about the CML and the format that has been put together for it. Of course, being a beta test group, you're always going to run into, some issues or something doesn't work right. But that's just, that's part of the way these things go. That's why they're beta tested. Now, I can actually speak towards the grade increase, and as an instructor who's currently doing it, why I think we're seeing that. And I think that has a lot to do with when we're doing lecture-based instruction with maybe handouts or something in the classroom. You always have someone who manages to skate through and is not exactly paying attention, or they miss some key points during your lecture. Or maybe they just kind of skim through the material that you've given them for follow-up. But, all those excuses, and that's pretty normal. I mean, sometimes they're working 70 hours a week on a big overtime job. But with the CML, they've got the opportunity to work when they can, and the knowledge checks and the way the CML goes through the courseware. If they don't quite get something in a knowledge check, it bumps them back to the start of that particular session and makes them look at that material again. And I think that is where that grade gap there is sort of being bridged, is they have to look at the material until they get it.
That's still very exciting, Steve, and I hope that continues to hold too, because I was more worried when we were implementing this especially during the grant beta process, looking at it now, is that grades come back are detrimental, doesn't show up the improvement that you see. And what do the committees say? Because that's why they should be monitoring also the grades and training directors, seeing what's going on. How can we show the value if it's not going to come back that way? So that's pretty exciting to hear that grades are improving better, because I don't want the training director ever to have to stand in front of the committee and say, here's where we're going and why, and it doesn't show an improvement. So good to hear.
I'm sure you remember the days where everyone sort of, showed up 20 minutes before class with their workbooks out and who actually did the homework.
Yeah. Well, you actually went to the class ahead of time. You assigned lessons before you got there that week. You know who don't want lesson where. So, right.
Luckily, those days are behind us, and the way the quiz material at the end of the lessons is even randomized. So it definitely helps put a damper on getting all the answers from someone in class, and that. But between those two things, between the way the course material is laid out and the quizzes at the end, I think that's where the better grades are coming from.
Very good.
Now, as far as from the viewpoint of an instructor, how it's changing my day, we here have, for years now, we've been doing half of our class time is in the classroom, and half of the time that the students are here is out in the shop. So they get 3 hours of classroom instruction and 3 hours of shop instruction every single week. What the CML has allowed us to do is continue with our normal hands-on instruction, and then we're able to expand on that. So do things that we normally would not have time for, as far as hands-on training, or just to sit down and do group discussion on things that they see on the job or issues they're having, because really that's incredibly important for the green first years, especially the guys that come in right out of high school. They don't understand completely the job site mindset and how to deal with certain situations when they get themselves out on the job for the first time. And so I think that that extra time is invaluable in the classroom.
That's excellent. Yeah, I'm like soaking all like there was so much you said. So let's just for a second, let's say challenges, because you mentioned change and there's always going to be some pushback and there's going to be some challenges, difficulties. You're in a beta process.
Opportunities.
Right. But but here's my thing. If I'm listening and I'm hesitant, I'm an instructor and I'm feeling like, what are some of the things we hear, right? That maybe people feel like, okay, I'm not going to be as needed, or, I don't know. Yeah. Like my job's going away, or what I do, you hear these things. And change can be scary, but it's obviously the most constant thing in our lives is change. So when you think of those challenges / opportunities, what would you say to the instructor who's a little nervous, maybe about, they're not in the notebook, right? We stopped the notebooks, but what are you saying to them about participating in this?
So, as an instructor, I believe, overall, obviously, the role of an instructor in the classroom is going to change with CML, but it's finding a way to turn that into something that's positive for the apprentices. And so, of course, some things have been mentioned. Tutoring is always necessary. You're always going to have someone that does not glean the information from the CML course. Maybe it's the way it's put together, or they just need a different explanation. It's the extra time to cover things that are not part of the normal curriculum. So you can put together anything. Instead of covering AC or DC theory out of a theory textbook, you can bring some coils and capacitors into the classroom with multimeters and show them how they interact and build, charging circuits or timer circuits with a resistor and a capacitor and a 9-volt battery. It's those little things that that really tie together the concept to something that the apprentice can do with their hands. So, of course, something simple like that we would call a lab, but being able to take those concepts and get a lot of these guys to put their hands on something during that classroom time that we would traditionally be doing a lecture-based process, I think that will really solidify the learning process for a lot of apprentices.
That's great. It really expands what the instructor gets to do. I mean,
It's going to be a challenge to our instructors. I get it, because not only we have the best instructors and the best organizations around. I get it. That's already there. And we're asking them to change what we deliver into the apprentice in the classroom, which honestly, I hear questions about you trying to do away with the instructor. No, it's elevating the need of the instructor in a local classroom, because now I can explain DC and AC theory, but I got to show how to use it. Now I'm going to build tools and labs. I've got to show why I learned that theory and how I'm going to apply it and why I'm doing it. That's the difference. And in some ways, it's easier to teach theory. Just think about it. Think about teaching AC, DC theory. You can do it all day long without ever applying it. That's a different objective than taking a lab set and going out and taking some instruments. All right, here's why we learned AC theory. We study capacitive inductive reactance for this reason. Take measurements, go show. And here's what you're going to see on the job site. Here's how you apply it. That's why we do it. That's why we learn it. So we have those critical thinking skills about how to understand why we learned AC theory. So we go back and take those measurements and see. And that is asking the instructors to pick their game up. I get it. I get it. That's going to be a little tough on some of them. We'll have to find tools and resources for the instructors to help along the way, and we will. We'll build more and we'll add more. But that's the chief worry. But yet the benefit to the apprentice, as Stevie just talked about, that's the whole benefit. Is teaching the apprentice now, all right, I understand AC theory, I understand DC theory, but here's how I can use it. Here's why I learned DC theory so I can study AC theory, study transformers, motors. I can take these meters and take these critical thinking skills and solve problems. That's what it's for. And that's what it teaches you in the long run, whenever you can apply what you learn. And I often said it 1,000 times that education and training is two different things. I'll say it a million more. Is education prepares an individual to be trained. Okay, we've been educating the DC and AC theories. We educate. All right, now let's go train them. Let's show them how to use it. And that's where we need to go.
Right. And the instructor's always been so important and valuable. And so now it's even filling a different need where we've kind of all been talking about this idea of, what maybe someone's not seeing on the job, not yet. And so they're able to come in and really help make sense, help connect these two worlds, something on paper or screen, to the actual work that they're going to be doing, that they're committing their time to.
So, Stevie, you got a good job and a hard job, but I get it, buddy. Thank you. Everything you do, that's exactly right, what we're asking you to do. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Can I say something real quick, Cindy?
Of course. Yes, Marcus.
I think the other thing I heard from what Stephen was saying is, if somebody's watching this and they're on the fence, it wasn't like this huge pivotal shift. He's still doing the same thing he's done. He's just found out, I got a little more time. So you can kind of work it in slow. It doesn't have to be a huge change. I think it definitely has the potential to be a huge change, but it doesn't have to be right out the gate. So I think is that
great point.
Do you agree with that, Stephen?
Absolutely. It doesn't have to change overnight. We're still bringing them in for that 3 hours of classroom time. And I just sit them down and, let's go ahead and start working on your coursework. And that's my time to walk around the classroom and answer any questions that they may have.
Yep.
There you go.
That's a huge, Marcus, that's really, and Steve, not A, but V. It's a massive point to make, is that it's not like you walk in the next day and everything's changed. And it also doesn't mean that there's not value in that time to talk about the lesson, to talk about the questions. It's not saying that's not important. It's about that blend and pulling those together. But yeah, to answer the questions, like, it's not like, sorry, we don't answer those anymore. We now just, we only do labs and you can only do hands-on. It's not ending something. It's kind of perfecting it, if you will. So we keep talking about this, and I want to make sure before we end that we come back to the grant. So we're talking about this grant program, and these are all these things that it's doing, that it makes available to us. But what the grant is doing, Steve, I'm come back to Steve A. So this grant, you've already said it, but I just want to make sure we reiterate. What is this grant doing for that local program? We've talked again about what the instructor is going to do, about how it's going to be different for them and the apprentice, and the great opportunities that it brings. But can you just one more time just kind of tell us, so if you are a part of this grant, what If I'm a JATC, what does that mean for me?
Well, it's a situation where if you're not participating, you're really missing out on some money coming your way to help both the apprentice and the program. This grant was set up in such a manner, and this was a little bit different than our original grant proposal, the way it came about. And so what we ended up with is a program that allows the JTCs to continue to pick. They haven't picked their own apprentice. We haven't changed anything as far as the duties of the JATC. They still have the same responsibilities as far as selecting the apprentices, disciplining the apprentices, setting up their policies. We haven't changed any of that. The only thing that's changing with the grant is that we are now giving each JATC up to 12 hours per month per instructor per class, reimbursing him for that tutoring time. So now we get a chance that they can save money if they bring them in one night a week for tutoring and one night a week for lab exercises. Half of their budget just got cut for that first year class because the grant is paying for that. All the students' fees are covered in the first year for their textbooks, by the way, which is probably the largest expense that they'll have through their apprenticeship, as they buy most of the textbooks in the first year. That's all covered by the grant. The online access fees, the lesson fees are all covered by the grant. So the first year students are really coming in and getting quite a deal. And as Todd mentioned, this is the best time for them because they aren't making any money yet. And it's harder for them to make that first bill that they have to pay when they have to buy their textbooks. So the grant is taking care of all of that. The JTCs have complete control. We at the Electrical Training Alliance are going to be tracking everything. We do all of the paperwork for the Department of Labor for the grant. So we will ask the training director a small questionnaire each quarter to fill out for us to help us with our quarterly report. But as far as an extensive amount of paperwork, they are not going to have that. We take care of all of that through the Electrical Training Alliance. So it's not an extra burden for the JATC to be a participant of this grant. So there's really, I can't think of any reason why a JATC would not want to participate with this program. Now, I can tell you that we have 2 years left in this grant. We think we'll get a third year for this with an extension because of the late start that we were able to get. So we have really 3 years, let's say 3 years left of this grant. Again, it's only for the first year, but a program can participate 1 year or they can participate in the next 3 years if they want to, bring in each one of their first year classes into this. There's no contract that you have to sign that you're going to stay in it forever. You participate as long as you want to participate in this program. And we think that it's going to really benefit a lot of the JTCs around the country. The CML lessons for the first year are probably about 90% complete. So if you're starting right now, and we have 8 programs that are currently participating in the grant. We've got, I think, an additional 20 that I've spoken to over the last week or week and a half that have committed to participate in the grant. And I think we're looking for at least another 15 to 20 more. I mean, if we get 30 more, we'd be happy to have them. But I think we're going to have more people participate and contacting us to go. We've got plenty of money right now for the first part of this grant. And it might last through the next 3 years. It might be eaten up in the next 2 years. But whatever it is, you should take advantage of it. So.
And you said there's no extra burden. When you said the no extra burden on the JTC, I was looking at Tonya, so you didn't know I was. But I'm thinking, it's not, hey, JTC, here's a bunch more paperwork, and now here's all these added responsibilities. It's, no, we've got you covered, and we're going to help. There's this financial assistance, and it just, there's a lot, as you pointed out, Steve, a lot of great things. And if you're listening to this and, you haven't heard much about it, Steve A., don't call Steve V. If you want an instructor perspective, I'm sure he'd be glad to help, but we're going to call Steve Anderson or reach out via email. And I think that's important, to know that we're here to answer questions. Marcus will help. Tonya will help, as far as the Electrical Training Alliance staff, to help answer those questions. And we don't want you coming in feeling unsure, uncertain. And then you've got, you've heard from some training directors and instructor, and there's more out there that can certainly assist, because again, this is about, Todd, you said it, I think it was at NTI 2021. You said this is about you, right? This is for the local program.
True as far as what it's designed for, to help out, and then for several reasons. One is to take some of the load off the first year of the apprentice, first year, yes. Help in the instructional content method, yes, because there are instructors that are working 70 hours a week as well, not just apprentices, coming in and teaching, part-time, come in and teach. So it helps them out to be able to have a course delivery model to use and rely on. But also money, because if asking local programs now to start picking up more, do more hands-on training, that means more expense, because there's consumables involved. So there has to be some way to start saving a few dollars out of it, trying to find a way to transfer that money from one area to the other. And it's another reason behind the goal of the grant is trying to find a way to save up some money to put in the hands-on training. Because you want everybody to do hands-on training, it's great. Everybody loves it. Everybody wants it. Everybody says, every class I've ever taught, is the one feedback you always give as a constant is, how do we get more hands-on training time? How do we have more time to do hands-on? And okay, we can do that, but it costs. So what are we going to start doing trying to help out that cost?
Right.
This is one tool.
Excellent.
The real bonus to this program is that the curriculum is all updated. This is brand new curriculum. This is the first year curriculum of the upgrade that they're doing with all the CML lessons for the next 5 years. And Marcus could probably answer more on this, on how improved this curriculum is. But this is the first year curriculum that we're teaching right now through this program, that all the programs will be required to go through over, upcoming in the next couple of years. So Marcus, you might want to just talk about how the curriculum has been improved and how great these lessons are now with this new format.
Yeah, I think kind of like what Stephen was saying is, it's great because it gives the learner the opportunity to go through the curriculum. If they're struggling on stuff, it points them back and takes them back to where they missed something. So yeah, overall, it's a great upgrade. We've got 10 courses outlined in the grant that we cover. I think 11 when the Foundation of Mathematics 1 is done, and 2 of those, the math course being one of them, are going to be optional. They'll be a part of the grant. You guys can enroll them or not. There's no test. There's no credit for it. Either one of those, but they should be good tools for helping out there.
Good.
Marcus, thanks for doing the Stephen thing. I mean, we had that option this whole time, and I really I dug in on it's going to be Steve A and, Steve V, and I could have just gone with Stephen, but let's make things a little more challenging because that's what I like to do, apparently. Is there anything, Tonya, stop shaking your head. Is there anything else? I want to make sure, we've covered everything. Is there anything else, anybody, closing thoughts on this? I think we covered most of it, but just wanted to make sure.
Well, I would just like to say as closing thought that if you have any interest at all in participating in this program, just give me a call. And easy to find from the Electrical Training Alliance website. And most people have got my phone number or my email address. If your committee's unsure, I've probably done half a dozen presentations to different JTCs around the country that are thinking about participating but aren't quite sure what they're getting into yet. And I can tell you that we will have a memorandum of understanding that goes out to each one of the JTCs. And basically, it's just stating who's responsible for what. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. The JTC does not lose any control. They're going to continue to do exactly what they have been doing. We don't take any of that around, and we'll put it in writing, and we'll send it out, and they get a chance to look at that. So if you're interested, give us a call. If you'd like me to do a presentation to your JTC, that's not a problem. Just call and we'll get something scheduled. So we look forward to work with all the programs. Our goal, just to let you know, over the next couple of years is to run 5,000 people through this grant. And so there's plenty of room for everybody. If you want to participate, give us a call. We'd love to have you.
Yeah. And just make sure you understand that. Steve will talk to individual committee members. He'll talk to the whole committee, whatever is needed. So this, we want to, the goal is for that complete understanding. We're not trying to hide anything behind a veil, a curtain. This is, here's what it is. And we want you fully versed in it. Marcus, were you saying, I feel like you might've been saying something right before Steve started, but.
Yeah. I think the big key takeaways are, this grant covers the course fees for those 10 courses for the apprentices. So they get that for free. I don't know if we've said it, maybe I missed it, but there's also funding in there for tutoring. So I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 12 hours per month per class, which we've kind of loosely defined a class as 20 apprentices. So if you got 70 or 80, then, you'll get a portion of that. The other big thing, I was just at the Northwest Training Directors Conference, and one of the big pieces of feedback that they were excited about is that we're taking on the burden of the grant. We send out a quarterly form that you guys are going to have to fill out. There'll be a little bit of data population that goes on there on your end, but for the most part, we're the ones doing all the big lift for the grant.
Thanks, Steve.
Stuff, so.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
Marcus, I heard that being at the JTC when they did participate in a grant, it was cumbersome. Very grateful, very, very grateful for having it, but it was a lot of additional work. So when you say, all these benefits plus, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for chatting with us about this and sharing your experiences. I'm hopeful that it's helpful to those that are listening, and they're going to be reaching out. Steve Anderson, your phone's going to blow up. Your email inbox is going to be full, maybe fuller is probably what I should say. But, we want to get the word out and make sure everybody's able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, thanks to everyone taking time today to talk about it as well as participating in the grant. David, Alan, thank you guys very much. We'll learn by your experiences. You let us know how we can improve, but thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. Todd, what? How many thoughts do you have swimming around in your head at this point from that one?
Too many, but they're all good.
There's
a lot of good feedback we heard from our instructor. That was great information from the instructor, but also our training directors as well. And the benefits of this grant have been just that, benefits. There's always challenges, always hiccups, always things we'll need to do to correct and improve. But overall, I'm very happy in the success as well as the unintended and unforeseen benefits. The grades of the apprentices is picking up. I was worried about it going the other way, and it's showing the other one side of improvement is outstanding. It's good news.
Yeah, when we hear unintended consequences, a lot of times we think negative, but it's like, no, this is a wonderful benefit consequence from this happening. And Steve Anderson, we kind of made this bet with him. We wanted him to be like, every JTC should be involved in this. And so now he says it, I think, pretty much every time he gets the chance, but he's not wrong. That was the thing to me, like looking at it as a JTC or as that first year apprentice coming in, even as that instructor and training director, it's like from each vantage point, you can see where the good is.
Right. Just let Steve is exactly right. And he said it over and over. It's not about taking anything from the local program. They have all the autonomy, all the control, all the selections, everything, discipline, all this done in classes, same way. We're just trying to find a way to take some of the costs.
Right.
Some of the costs out of the way, help the apprentice, help the program, what it's about.
Right, absolutely. That's what it is. It's taking some of the burden and giving back some great tools and benefits. Thank you so much, gosh, to everyone that joined us, to Steve Anderson, Marcus, and Tonya. My goodness, the energy that you all have poured into and are pouring into this and making it a reality. Thank you all so much. And Alan, Dave, and Steve, Steven, Steve V, whatever we're going to say, thank you all so much, wow, for sharing your experience and perspective. That to me was so valuable. It's one thing to hear from us again, but to hear from those who are actually doing it is just so different. We're always very grateful to you, the listeners, for taking time to join us. Remember, we want to hear from you. If there are topics that you would like us to cover, send me an email. Send it to saywhat, that's say, SAYWATT, at electricaltrainingalliance.org. Our next episode will be in July, where we will talk with A.M. Crawford about how they can support JTCs and AJTCs with grant opportunities for your individual programs. And I know we just talked about grants, so I don't want to confuse. This is something even a little bit to kind of expound on other grant opportunities.
As they just said, is to take the load off the local program. That's what it's about.
Right.
We'll find a way to help take that load off and other opportunities for grants.
Exactly. So you'll want to tune in. Until then, stay connected with us through our newsletters, blog posts. Be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to this podcast, tell a colleague or friend about it. Stay powered up, and we will see you next time.
Say what?